So now that we've gotten the raw drum tracks, we can then mix the song. So this is my setup. Just Windows 7 computer, just typical Logitech speakers, nothing too fancy. But I don't use the extra speakers, they're just for 5.1, but I mix in stereo with the sub. And I use Sennheiser HD 555 headphones to headphone mix. I also make sure that it sounds great in headphones and great on speakers as well, and I try and make a little balance. There's some things you might have to adjust for each one to sound good. Another thing I do when I'm recording is that if I'm doing a cover, I will try my best to get it to sound like the original, but I'll give it more of a modern take, like a more modern vibe, like the sound of it. And I'll also have a little bit of my tone in there. And when I'm doing original, I just try to get it to sound as awesome I can to my ears. And then I might compare it to, say, like a Rush song or some new albums and some old albums and get like the overall volumes and everything and just match them up and then sort of add my type of sound to it as well. And then when that's done, then I master it. And I master it on just this Boss BR600 because it's got mastering presets and packages. And so, but I won't master on Cubase because I don't have the right equipment to master on Cubase. But I've always just mastered on the Boss and it always sounds great. Some videos I'll just sort of enhance the mix, which is pretty much what mastering is, and then I'll just chuck that on YouTube. But for the majority of the stuff that I record the music for, that's like my band records or I record guitar, like there's my guitar over there and bass is in there, and then I'll just master it in the Boss. But anyway, I'll just show you how I actually mix now. And then if I'm going to do any editing, like splicing tracks together, I'll do it in Audacity, because when I do it in Cubase, if I export those final drum tracks, they'll be moved ahead from any other stuff I've recorded on Traction. So yeah, I'll just do that in Audacity. Most of the editing will be done in Cubase, but any splicing I usually do in Audacity. I don't need much of it though. I use Cubase AI4, so do that. So when we go new project, and I just usually do mastering setup, and okay. And this here is just like the same thing as Traction, where it saves all the files to this folder, so I've got that on my desktop. I'll just press OK because that's where I usually do it. And so now this is the Cubase project I use. So you got all the plugins here. I just use the preset ones that come with the program. And here's the EQ, 4-band EQ, the master track, and then all here is where all your tracks will be. And it's got a stereo track there, so I'll just get rid of that because I'm not using a stereo. And then so now you got that, so you can import your tracks. I've cut them shorter because I didn't really give myself much to play around with, to mix with. I should have played a more steady beat, but anyway, this will have to do. Yeah, and then so you got track 1, that's kick track, track 2 snare, 3 and 4 overheads, and then toms, octobans, and piccolo snare. So there are your tracks. You can name them if you want to, but I don't need to because I already know what everything is. But yeah, so I have the tracks here. Sometimes if the kick drum's a bit too quiet, I'll boost the audio by clicking this and dragging it up so it's louder. And some of the toms might have to be boosted a bit as well, so 5, that's tom 1. And I'll just make sure nothing's peaking when I boost it as well, otherwise it will distort. And then so tom 2 up a bit, tom 4 and 3 pretty quiet, so I'll boost those. And then yeah, that should be good. And then so what I usually first do is I pan each track. So I'll bring this up so you can see it more. And most of the time when I'm panning, I pan them in a drummer's perspective, because then it's easier to air drum when you're trying to learn a song or something. So left overhead fully left, right overhead fully right. And then the toms, it changes sometimes. I just pan them wherever I want, so from left to right. So tom 3 about there, tom 4 about there, and the octobans, they'll be the same thing as well. Sometimes I want to pan them differently, but for now I'll just pan them as if they're on the kit. And the piccolo, sometimes it's a bit left, but I'll just have it center so it has more attack. And once you've done that, so then I'll start by soloing one of the tracks such as the kick drum, and I'll listen to it. Oh, and first I put a 20 Hz bass cut because there's not much below that frequency to deal with. So I just put a 20 Hz high pass filter. I'll turn the limiter off because it's just on there. And sometimes when I'm done with mixing all this, I'll give a bit of a boost and I'll cut around 480 just to drop the mids a little. So just by 1 or something. I just do subtle EQing. So yeah, about that. And I'll put a bit of a high shelf from 4,000, or actually 5,000 and upwards. Maybe 2, depending on how the mix sounds. I'll just turn that off for now. But now that you've seen. Yeah, so we go bass drum. Just make this bigger so you can see. You click this button here, this E, and it takes you to the equalizer. So when I EQ, I just mainly, depending on the genre, if you're doing metal, you want to EQ lots to bring out that click and that attack and everything. But for most of like my originals and most of the stuff I do, I just kind of do subtle EQing. Like I'll take away some frequencies and boost some to bring out the clarity or the bass. Or I'll boost some small frequencies or drop out little frequencies. I usually start with speakers, and then I keep switching back and forward through headphones and speakers to see how the mix sounds. But for now, I'll just do a rough thing of what I usually do. So I'll play this, and you'll be able to hear. Sometimes I'll boost it like about, I don't know, 60 or 100 low shelf, which means it boosts all the frequencies below there. And so to give it that real rumble. And then I'll just keep this running so you can hear the difference. I'll just do a quick thing. So you can hear the attacks being brought out now. And I'm not sure how this will sound on speakers, but I'll just do a rough thing. So sometimes I add a little boost to 120 to give it an extra punch in the low end. Or sometimes I'll take out a bit of the mids, like you can see here. I'll just go back. So you can cut out the boxy sound. But anyway, I'll just stick to a rather simple EQ. Okay, that's bass drum. Show you the snare, how I do. I'll just rush through it so you can just get the basic idea of how I mix. So snare drum I usually add a bit at 200 to give it that fat low end. I usually give about 9,000 high shelf to bring out the really high snares. And then depending on the song I'm doing, I'll usually boost around 2,000 to 4,000 to bring out the snap. Bring that from the start again. So that should generally be pretty good. And the overheads, I noticed when I was explaining the high pass and the mixer that I don't use them, I'd actually realised that they were turned on, and I've always been wondering why I'm not getting enough bass. But yeah, so I fixed that after. But yeah, I don't use high pass filters on overheads or any of the drums, but for some reason they were turned on. But yes, but I fixed that anyway. So the overheads, I just give a boost in the 12,000 hertz, bring out that cymbally shimmer, and then maybe I'll play it while I'm doing it. And then maybe 7,500 just to bring out the main cymbal sound. And sometimes I'll do a little drop in the low end, or I'll drop out some of the mids just depending on the song, but I want to keep this video as short as I can get. So it doesn't bore anyone with me just fiddling around. But with the toms, sometimes I put high pass filters. So for the tom 1, I'll about 90 hertz high pass. Tom 2, probably about 80 or 90 depending on the sound I want, but I won't get too fussy, too picky with it. And then low 4 tom, I like that big boomy thud, like kind of like a gong drum. So sometimes I leave it, sometimes put 30. And then yeah, OCTOBANS should be fine. And the piccolo probably the same as the other snare, but it might be a bit different. I'm just rushing it, so just showing you how to do a rough thing. Okay, so that's roughly it for EQing. So now I'll just show you the rough mix. Okay, that's pretty much all the EQing done. Sometimes for the toms I'll add a bit or drop a bit, or sometimes I'll just leave it as it is. But so now we'll do compressing. The same thing with EQ. Sometimes I don't actually use the compressors, sometimes I do, just depending on the song. But I'll just show you a quick thing of how I compress. So you go Dynamics, VST Dynamics, and here is the compressor. So I usually use probably bass drum 1 and then fiddle around with that. I don't actually know what these actual settings do. I just kind of push buttons and spin things and see how it goes, and yeah, that's the way I get my sound. So just play this. And the gate's on, so I'll turn that off because I don't really like too much gates in my drums. There's a limiter on as well. Drop this. The bass drum's distorting there. So that's just a rough, that's pretty much all I do to the bass drum. It's just a compressor, sometimes a limiter to bring out, for like if I'm doing metal, to bring out a constant type of attack. For the snare, I'll do a compressor as well, just however it sounds, just fiddle around with some stuff until it sounds good. And so I put on this isolator, but I don't use gates either. Sometimes I might use gates in the toms if they're ringing too much, but this is generally what I use. So that's a bit too compressed. Turn that limiter off. And the same thing again, I might use the limiter and other stuff, but just for now I won't use it. And I might add a bit of reverb as well, depending on the song. So go to reverb. It's only really subtle reverb as well. So that's probably the snare. And the overheads, I'll just add a compressor to as well. Maybe the toms as well, the piccolo snare I will, OCTOBANS, depending on the song. But that's pretty much how I mix. I'll put some reverb on the piccolo snare depending on the song as well, and the toms. The overheads will just be a compressor, or maybe not even a compressor, just some EQ. And that's generally about it. So I'm running out of time on the camera here because the battery's about to die, but I'll try to get it done as fast as I can. So you've got the whole song here, it's all done, and I'll add the guitars and all that, and everything's done. So then I'll try to get it as loud as I can to the right here on the master. So with that clipping, then I'll add this little boost I was talking about before, and the little cut. And with the toms, that's one thing I forgot to mention with the toms. When I EQ, I'll drop a few of the mid frequencies, boost a tiny bit of low end, and some of the high frequencies I'll boost a tiny bit as well. And I'll probably add a compressor to them if they're not cutting through enough and they need more full tone. Some of the mics, like the PG52 is pretty good, like it sounds pretty good flat, but I might just take off a few of the boxy kind of sounding frequencies and I'll add a real low rumble to it. Same with the other toms. OCTOBANS, I might just drop off a little bit of low end and boost a tiny bit of the highs just so they cut through. Or sometimes I might drop the highs if I want more of a low sound. And the piccolo snare, just the same thing as the other snare, and that's about it. Make sure that's not clipping. It probably is clipping, but it will take me a while to go through this, so I'm just trying to keep it as brief as I can. And once that's done, so this is all good. And then this little blue thing is the markers, where it's the area that you're going to be exporting. So you drag that to the end and you drag the other side to about the end of your track, so that's the area it's going to be exporting. So then you go File, Export, Audio Mixdown, and I'll save it to just desktop, drum recording, save, and then that's all good. Make sure it's WAV file, so that's lossless audio, and I just changed it. And then so that's all good. If you want a mono export, you can click that and it exports in mono, but no one wants mono exports. So click out of that, stereo output, and that's all good, so export. And then once that's finished exporting, I usually take the finished file and then I'll just master it. And when I master, I just used some EQ, compressor again. I think it's a multi-band compressor. And then maybe I put another high pass on at 20 Hertz, and bit of mix changes, output levels. I'll boost the levels as high as I can get them before they distort, but I won't go too far because there's a kind of thing these days where everyone wants to get like max volume as they can, but sometimes it just like creates a brick wall where all the frequencies just everything's just boosted and it's just too loud, and sometimes it distorts with a few albums. But yeah, that's pretty much how I master. And then yeah, that's about it. Hopefully it wasn't too brief about some of the stuff I was talking about. Otherwise, you'd be sitting here all day watching me, or watching a video of me mixing a song for 2-3 hours, and the camera battery was running out. So, but anyway, hopefully you understood, and if you didn't, hopefully you learned some stuff, and maybe you can even help me out with some of the problems I mentioned in the video. But yeah, at the end of the video, I'll post the actual final mix of the drum track that I was showing you in the video. And that actually has some time and effort mixed in it, which I will do now. And hopefully it didn't sound too bad. I hope you liked the video. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, as you know. So subscribe if this helped you, or if you want to, like the Facebook page and follow me on Twitter. Links will be posted below. First time I've ever done that, but it's pretty cool. Okay, now we can end the very awkward video. Goodbye.